everybody, and welcome back to Debate Hub. I'm Chesh, your master debater, and I am here with Chris Shelton, with our super special, awesome, we're talking about Scientology. And I believe today we are going to roll it back a little bit because there's some extra stuff that happened in the 50s and early 60s, I think you said, that we really need to talk about. So, Chris, who are you? What's up?
Hey, everybody. What is this, round 3 or 4 of our discussions about this?
Pretty sure round 4, yeah.
3 or 4, yeah, wow. And we're still in the 1950s, which is actually gonna probably makes a lot of sense because there was a lot of really super important stuff that happened all the way back in the 1950s that sort of help explain why Scientology is the way that it is. And I thought today, for fun, rather than skip through that and then try to explain it after the fact, I just got to go back and talk about a few things that were also really important from that time period before we get into the formation of fully modern Scientology in the 1960s. So, okay, so we've talked about L. Ron Hubbard. We talked about the occult a little bit. We talked about the formation of Dianetics rolling over into Scientology and the growth of this over the 1950s and how it sort of networked out into different churches around the world. And these were churches now. They incorporated as a religion in 1953. And so I got a little bit more detail on some of this stuff. And but before we get into any of that, I also brought a little show and tell because I've been talking a lot. And I just thought I'd show a few things. This, just to give some idea of the scope of this stuff, because maybe if you see it, you kind of get your head around it faster. This is one of 2 dictionaries that make up the language of Scientology.
That's a dictionary.
This is a dictionary. This is modern management technology defined.
How is that? Right? How is that bigger than like a Britannica book?
Yeah, this is just pages of definitions with some illustrations. Like here's an illustration of a barometer, which is called a glass because this includes naval ship terms because they were out on boats. And so, that whole language got incorporated into the language of Scientology, right? Boat, nautical, language. Here's a paper jogger, right? To show you how, remember you have those vibrating machines that used to jog stacks of paper so that you could organize them into little stacks, right? That's defined in here. But you also have things like port captain defined in here. The port captain and his division are responsible for the PR area control of ports which the ship frequents or which she plans to visit. So the port captain is basically the ship representative for public relations is basically what that says. So that's a title of a post and a job that you hold in Scientology is port captain. There's a person who is the port captain. And
that's a little bit, that seems a little silly.
That definition is right here. Well, you need someone who, when your boat goes from place to place to place, somebody needs to be your PR guy.
Yes, that's true. Like the job itself makes sense, but the fact that they're using this special terminology is a little bit.
Well, and there are.
Dare I say culty?
Dare you? That's exactly the thing, as I wanted to show how the language is loaded through, just hundreds and hundreds of pages. This dictionary also has organizing charts. I don't know, it's hard to see. But there have been a number of ways that Scientology organized itself over the years with these org boards. These are called org boards, organizing boards. And they evolved over the years. This shows the evolution of them. This was the original layout in the 1950s and early 60s for a Church of Scientology. This was the organizational layout of it. And then it changed here in 1965 to this 7-division system, which is basically what it is now, but it's got a lot of variations over the years as to how they morphed and developed it. And it wasn't, as I've been learning recently, it was a very chaotic, disorganized, bit of madhousing. It wasn't really like a smooth, easy transition. When people imagine with these org boards, with organizing boards and policies and things, that there's committees and and that, it's very bureaucratic, and people, meet and then meet again, and then, make revisions and meet again. That's not really how any of this worked. It was Hubbard or one of his inner circle, aides, who were writing a lot of the policies for the church, and just, okay, this is policy, here we go, and let's mimeograph it and send it out all over the world. And then, maybe a month later there's a revision, and then maybe a month later there's another revision. And that's kind of how they would revise and deal with organizational policies through the years, issued from the office of L. Ron Hubbard, regardless of whether, he actually is the one who wrote it or not. His name goes on it and he approves it. And that's how you have all these policies. And from all of those policy letters is where most of these definitions are derived. They literally just find the policy where Hubbard says, we're going to have a port captain, and this is the person's job, and this is what they do. And they just take lines out of that and go, okay, here's the definition for it. And they compile all of that into these dictionaries. And there is
good.
Yeah, that's how these came together. And so this was all back in the 1970s that this was all put together. And this is kind of how they organized themselves. It would be similar to if, Jesus commissioned a Bible to be put together where, okay, take all my quotes, take all my stuff that I've said or written down anywhere. And from that, let's create a dictionary of all the terms of Christianity, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this would be,
Yeah, I mean, I guess in one way it's kind of cool that we have all of that, and in another way it's kind of nuts that we have all that. And in another way, I guess it kind of lends to the discussion and debate that you were having with FTFE about whether or not Flat Earth counts as a cult, and when people are comparing things like Flat Earth to Scientology, just Scientology is just in a whole nother field. These things are they're not comparable.
Exactly. This is how you unify people in belief, right? Is you issue centralized, dogmatic policies, and technical bulletins are the other half of Scientology. You either have these policies. This is a green book, by the way, because the policy letters of Scientology are printed with green ink on white paper. I mean, we're pretty deep in minutia right now, but that's how you instantly know what you're looking at. You look at a piece of paper, green ink, white paper, immediately this has to do with organizational matters,
which nobody else would recognize. It's all internal.
That's right.
And that's, again, not to say that Flat Earth isn't problematic or doesn't have issues or aren't a bunch dick waffles. They're just not at this level of commitment.
There's a whole other set of issues called bulletins, technical bulletins of Scientology, which are printed with red ink on white paper. So a lot of the study of Scientology is done by reading red words. Yeah, it's color coded. That's right. There's also executive. What's that?
I was going to ask if this came from his wife, who was so organized and into organizing everything. If
I wonder. I don't know. I'm not sure, because I don't think it comes out. I don't think the color flash system. I don't know where he got it from. There was different I showed you the 7-division organizing board. Each division has its own color flash of paper. So division 1 is goldenrod yellow. Division 2 is blue, I think, sort of a pale blue. Treasury is pink. So everything issued out of Treasury is on pink paper. So all the invoicing, all of the purchase orders, all of the things that come out of Scientology internally are on pink paper. You're looking at Treasury stuff.
God, I wish I was this organized.
Yeah, technical is green, except that the color flash of the division is green, but the technical bulletins are red ink on white paper. So okay, that's cool. So anyway, there's this whole color system in Scientology, which is kind of interesting, just in terms of how they organize their writings. Yeah. And the other thing that I thought might visually show off the religiosity of Scientology, or just like how invested they are in it, this is the Background and Ceremonies book from the 1950s, when the Church of Scientology first incorporated. This was the total of this page was the total of the ceremonies and rituals of Scientology to make it religious, right? There's There's a wedding ceremonies. There's naming ceremonies for babies. There's funerals. There's a prayer day form of observance, right? Hubbard put this stuff together. That's it. That's the table of contents for this whole book, is just that. So this is 1950s, 60s, 70s religion of Scientology, right? So in the year 2000, Miscavige decides we're going whole hog on this. And that same book is now this.
Whoa.
This is now the background ministry, ceremonies, and sermons of the Scientology religion. Right?
Whoa.
Nice gold leaf. Look at this gold binding.
That
right?
looks like that looks like
like
a
how-
Christian
This
style
thing is
like
fucking
Catholic
heavy.
book. Yeah.
Right?
Is it printed in like
gold
script
binding.
too?
Gold binding. And
Wow.
of course, you open this thing up. This is meant to sit on a dais, right?
Yeah.
On a pedestal. And you have, text like this. And this right here, what I'm looking at, is a sermon. It's a pre-written sermon around a point of Scientology tech. Here's another one. Communication is Life is the title of this sermon.
Wow.
Communication is life. Without it, we are dead to all. The importance of communication has evolved since the ARC triangle was first discovered in July 1950.
Oh.
L. Ron Hubbard discovers the ARC triangle in July of 1950. Yeah, no, he didn't. He invented it. But anyway, here's a whole, this is like a 2-page sermon. And what Miscavige did in the year 2000 was he formalized the whole religious process of Scientology and put in a Sunday service on Sundays to make it more religious. You can go down to any church of Scientology on Sundays and go, I'm here for the Sunday service. And if they're bothering to put one on, they'll be shocked you showed up for it. But they'll use this book to do it. And it's not just a sermon you get. There's a whole litany of stuff, a whole format of how Sunday service is supposed to go. So, because it's not just talking at you, they also do this thing called group processing. But I'm not going to go too far into that. I just wanted to visually show how it went from, this sort of like facade, very thin facade of a religion, to something that is really embraced for the last 26 years. This deeply religious. No. We're definitely a religion. Let me show you, our religiosity.
Book.
Yeah. The other thing I mentioned also in the early 1950s, we talked, I think, last time about exteriorization processes and what were called objective processes, where the auditing went from memory and going down your memory and going down your life to a kind of auditing that's called subjective auditing. This new kind of auditing, or this other kind of auditing, was called objective auditing, or objective processes that dealt with things in the real world. Pick up this can and look at it and tell me its temperature and stuff like that.
Tasks.
And very repetitive. Yeah, these are deeply trance-inducing processes. Well, I said there was a big book with tons of them. This is the book.
Whoa.
Yeah, when I said there were tons of them, I wasn't kidding. This book is the Objectives Handbook. And this was printed by Scientology. The image on the
front looks like something from Fallout.
Yeah, this is the Objective Processes Handbook. And here you have a guy and another guy and a clock, a time, and the guy's pointing because time and communication, and what they use, another word they use is havingness. These are things that are dealt with objective processes. In fact, I thought, since I said there were thousands of them, I'd just come through here and give you guys a couple examples of what Hubbard was developing back then. This is most of these processes come out of the 1950s. Yeah. What they do is they've got them divided up now into, it wasn't always this way. When Hubbard was first doing it in the 50s, this was not anywhere near this organized. He was just coming up with stuff left, right, and center, and he'd write a bulletin about it or talk about it in the lecture, and that would go out, and people would take the commands or take the process and just run it. So this book was a compilation. It took them years to go through every lecture, every bulletin, everything they could find, and dig out every single one of the objective processes that Hubbard had ever described or talked about. And that's what this is. So it's a really big book because Hubbard described a lot of them. In fact, here's the table of contents. And every one of these lines represents a class of process. So there's unconscious person. You have 9 processes for dealing with an unconscious person. You have 10 to 19 deals with a dissociated person. You have 20 to 49 orientation to present time. 50 to 69 lower levels of control. Because remember, as mentioned, that these objective processes are about controlling somebody else's body, making them do things. That the control is a feature, not a bug, of the processes, according to L. Ron Hubbard. You have to learn how to be controlled, he says, before you will ever be able to control yourself.
I don't think that's how that works, but
That's how Hubbard says it works.
I was sitting in the background nodding along with what you were saying as if you could see me.
And that's why people agree to it. That's why people agree to do this trip, right? Is because they think that by oh yeah, and here's an example of a bulletin in red on white. I don't know if you can see it there, but this is a actual HCO bulletin. And this is red ink. It might look black, but it's red.
Oh, it looks a little different. It does look like it's a different color. It's just a little hard to tell.
And here is an example of another kind of issue called an LRHED, L. Ron Hubbard Executive Directive.
Oh, good.
Another issue type. And it's got a little border around it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's blue ink on white paper. So all of the second you see blue ink on white paper, you know, oh, I'm looking at an L. Ron Hubbard Executive Directive.
It's like when Bibles make Jesus, whatever Jesus or God said, in a specific color.
That's right. It contextualizes the kind of thing you're looking at or reading. The red on white are instructions. The bulletins are instructions for how to run processes. The green on white is instructions for how to run your organization.
Oh, okay.
Very different things, right? If you want to know how to write an invoice, you go look up the policy letter. It's green on white. If you want to know how to run an objective process, you go look at the bulletin. It's red on white. So that's how Scientology divides in a broad sense its, or classifies its materials. Right? So you got books, you got bulletins, you got policy letters, executive directives, and you've got about 50 other issue types.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, so this is all sort of minutia backlines organization. But I thought, for example, check this out. Here is an unconscious person assist. Here's a procedure for what to do with somebody if you run across somebody who's unconscious.
Oh, good.
A person who is unconscious, even someone who has been in a long continued coma, can be helped using a process called an unconscious person assist. They call them assists. It's not formally auditing. It's called an assist, which is like a lower form of auditing, but it relies on the same principles.
Right.
So if you're dealing with physical stuff, often in Scientology, you will receive what is called an assist. And there are about 50 different assists, but there's 3 main ones. But this unconscious person assist is one of the non-3 main ones, but makes up the body of these assists. With this assist, you can help to get a person into communication with you and his surroundings, and so bring him from unconsciousness back to life and livingness. It's an easy assist to learn and to do. So here's just one procedure.
This is part of the religious part that has been added?
All of this is the religious materials and scriptures of Scientology, the Church of Scientology. That is what all of this is classified under. The policies and the technology, the bulletins, are the scriptures of Scientology. So when I'm reading this to you, it is literally as though I am reading to you from the Scientology Bible.
Right. It'd be the equivalent of reading, like, if you have this many cows, then you should do this with it type of scenario.
Yeah, that's right. And it's pretty exact along those lines, right? They have policies on how to wash windows. They have policies on how to keep a space clean. They have, in the Sea Org, you have the Sea Org policy letters are called flag orders, and they are black ink on white paper. And
Ooh.
those tell you how to do things like polish brass, how to run a ship, how to read a compass, how to do all this ship shit. That's all in the Sea Org policies.
Do they?
Right?
Do they have a recipe for soap?
No, but they
Damn
do
it.
make it abundantly clear that you are not to use scented soaps.
Oh.
None
Okay.
at all. There are to be no scented products anywhere in the Sea Org or in Scientology at all. Period. End of story.
Was
You will
somebody just
never walk
sensitive?
into a church and be, you're not supposed to at least be, greeted by the lilac smell of air freshener.
To be fair, there were definitely times when I walked to church and I got to smell like 3 or 4 or 50 people's perfume all at once. So, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a place where you've got lots of people gathering. I kind of like that rule. Not gonna lie.
Now, just to give you an example of some of the other, there's the unconscious person assist, but when I talked in the 1950s about how Hubbard was trying to come up with ways of getting people to get out of their head, I'm going to give you an example. I just totally opened it at random here.
Okay.
Of a process adjacent to that. This is not a process to get you out of your head. This is a process because you're so screwed up, you can't get out of your head. So we're going to do these objective processes on you until you snap up as a Thetan and
you can't control yourself, so
head.
you need us to control you so you can then get out of your head.
You got it.
Because you can't do it yourself.
That's exactly it.
I see the logic.
So get this. This is from a bulletin from a lecture of 23 November 1953. The lecture was called Summary of Steps 1 through 4 of SOP 8C. That's cryptic, right?
Yeah.
There's also a lecture from the 8th of January 1954. So 2 months later, he gives another lecture called How to Know What the PC is Doing. These are both lectures from advanced clinical courses that Hubbard was giving in Phoenix, Arizona in 1953 and 54, right? So what was he telling people to do? Well, here's a process called kick the wall. You can ask a fellow to keep on kicking a wall, this is a quote, and keep on asking him if he's sure the wall is there and make him kick it again. And he'll get awful mad at you, but he'll sure get awful sure there's a wall there. His perception will come way up. So here are the commands for this process. This is a formal process in Scientology. You could walk into a church of Scientology today, and they could end up running this on you. Kick the wall. Are you sure the wall is there? Kick it again. Those are the commands of the process. Repeat the commands one after the other over and over to end phenomena. And that's what they have, this end phenomena we talked about, right? Where you're supposed to have a realization and be giddy and happy, right? And you're going to keep kicking this fucking wall until that happens.
Kicking the wall until my brain turns off.
Now, there are alternate commands where in the same lecture, Hubbard says, I've taken a pre-clear and made him go over and start kicking the wall. Just actively, actually kicking the wall and hitting the table with his fist, Hubbard adds. Make him hit the table with his fist and then say, now, are you certain the table is there? So the alternate commands here are hit the table with your fist. Are you certain the table is there? Hit it again. Are you certain that you hit the table?
I mean, as a Thetan, shouldn't I be able to be like, there is no spoon?
Yeah, no, not if you're doing objective processes. You're going to have to engage with the spoon.
Damn.
And the end phenomena of this is increased certainty and perception. So you're doing this until the person somehow demonstrates that they have increased their certainty and perception.
Great.
That's Scientology as straight as I can give it to you, a la 1953, 54.
Brother.
Right? So there's a whole book of processes like this. Now, you think that's ridiculous. You're like, come on, Chris, kick the wall. What the fuck are you talking about? Okay, here's another one. Find something you wouldn't mind looking at. This is process 155.
Something you wouldn't mind
Procedure.
looking at?
Yeah, procedure. That's a
Okay.
straight confronting process. It's a very mild process, but it has the effect of making people feel sane.
What?
Look around and find something you wouldn't mind looking at. Or, is there anything around here you wouldn't mind looking at? Or, look around the room here and tell me something that you wouldn't mind looking at. So you're going to give these commands over and over and over again until the person is in present time. Right? However they express
I could not. This is torture. This is torture.
This is torture. It is torture.
This is torture.
And you're paying for it by the hour.
Oh.
You're paying for it by the hour. And you're buying this in 12.5-hour blocks of auditing.
And I'm not paying small amounts of money either, right? Like, this is expensive.
You will get objective auditing like this using these kinds of processes at the lowest levels of Scientology. Right now, you walk into Scientology, they will do this to you. And they'll do this to you for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Never going.
And you're paying for it. So that's some show and tell. The other thing I wanted to show.
Thanks, I hate it.
I talked last week about the books that Hubbard was writing. We talked about the History of Man book, and I talked about how Hubbard gets into electronics and how electronics is very, very big in early Scientology for explaining how a disembodied, spiritual entity can control a body. How do you do that? Well, Hubbard says you do it through electronic flows that emanate from the thetan. And he's capable of creating energy at will. So he can use tractor beams and pressor beams to control the body. Hubbard also has a whole bunch of other stuff he says in the 50s that are absolutely madhouse nuts. And he says them in lecture series like this one. I thought I'd show it to you guys. This is a plastic binder of lectures that are sold by the Church of Scientology these days. If you go into a church and you say, I want to buy some L. Ron Hubbard lectures, this is the format that they sell them to you in. And it's a plastic case. It's all very futuristic. We literally used to make these things. And you have inside, you have two little modules of...
It was like a lunchbox, man.
Of CDs.
Whoa!
Yeah, these are the Hubbard
Who designed this?
Yeah, so cool. This is all designed by International Management of Scientology. Sea Org members designed all this.
Whoa, and well, they got some creative people.
One of these CDs, every one of these discs is an individual lecture in the series. So you have lecture 1, Methods of Research, the Thetan as an Energy Unit. That's literally the title of the lecture. This lecture series is called Source of Life Energy. And it's got a little Thetan, a little 8 turned on its side, which is an infinity symbol, which Hubbard loved. And it's got these these graphics of energy flows.
Looks like something from the 80s.
Right? Well, no, this is all produced in the 2000s.
Yeah, it's got like that retro 80s vibe, early 90s vibe, like the synth wave, like...
Scientology's tech is, the real world tech is about 20 years behind everybody else. So this is what they sell now. And this is the transcripts for those lectures.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, so you have the lectures, and then you have a little book that goes with this module, right? Lectures 1 through 6. And this is the format that Scientologists listen to Hubbard in. And they follow along with the transcript. And then at the back of the transcript is an index and a glossary of hard to define terms that Hubbard uses. There's pages and pages of definitions of
terms.
Yep.
Imagine that.
Like, for example, an expression Hubbard uses is hoist by your own petard.
Oh, okay.
Right? And the definition of that is destroyed or ruined by the very device which one had intended for another. In earlier warfare, a petard, an explosive charge attached to a gate or door to blow it open, would sometimes go off prematurely with the soldier who attached it, hoist, blown into the air by his own petard. Yeah,
You
you blew yourself up, right?
you shot
So
yourself in
they
the
give
foot.
this so they give this definition back here so that when Hubbard says hoist by your own petard, you're not sitting there going, what the fuck is he talking about? You know, you can look it up in the glossary, right? Because
Right,
Hubbard
right,
uses a
right,
lot of
right.
anachronisms and old expressions, right? Not
And
worth a
things he just made
nickel
the fuck up.
and stuff he made up. That's right. Onerous,
Oh.
overreach, out of line, order of magnitude. These are all terms defined
Ooh.
in the glossary,
Ooh.
right? So
Ooh.
so this is how Scientologists consume L. Ron Hubbard these days, is through these lecture sets. And this particular series
Interesting.
goes with a particular book of Scientology. So now, when Hubbard wrote that book, he gave this lecture series to explain it to his peeps.
Oh,
And that's how they now market it.
I wonder.
This book goes with this lecture series, and you buy the book and you read the
Right.
book and you listen to the lectures, and then you're going to know everything about the source of life energy. See?
I wonder how much of this is just making money, of like just double dipping, and how much of it is, are you just a bad author if you have to explain your book after the fact?
Well, that's a good question, actually. Now, prior to there being CDs, for years and years and years, Scientology produced these same lecture sets in binders of cassette tapes.
Whoa.
So
There's
here you have
cassette
the lectures
versions.
as cassettes, and
Oh
you
my
have the transcripts.
god.
This book is the transcripts.
That's so
So
cool.
the same
That is
concept of,
unironically really cool, though.
right, transcripts. You can go through, you sit in the classroom and you listen to the lecture on headphones and you follow along in the
Follow along.
transcript. And
Oh
if you have
man.
something you don't understand, you go back to the glossary in the back here, right?
Oh
And find the word
man.
you didn't understand and get it all
I
cleared up, right? Like a
man.
poltergeist or a plug horse. Do you know what a plug horse is?
I have no idea.
A plug horse is slang for an old, worn out horse. And the quote from
Oh.
Hubbard is, go out and play with the horse, the old plug horse. And he'd go out there and ... right? So the old plug horse. So
Oh.
Hubbard drops that as a line in the lecture. And you're sitting there going, what the fuck is a
What?
plug horse? Well, you look it up. It's an old, worn out horse, right?
Wow.
So this has been going on, this lectures and transcripts and glossaries. This has been going on since the 1970s, that they've been putting this material together like this in these
Yeah.
binders.
Yeah.
They really formalized it in the 80s. They really went crazy because it used to be in the 70s that it was reel to reel.
Yeah, well,
Tapes.
in the, it seems like, maybe I've got this a little bit wrong, but it seems like in the 40s and then very much in the 50s, Hubbard was presenting something that was futuristic, something that looked forward, something that looked ahead, whereas by the time what you seem to be describing in the 70s, which I'm sure we're going to get to probably next time, the it seems it's flipped.
It gets interesting as the world becomes more technically savvy.
The world
Hubbard
becomes more
was
technically
really
savvy, and he's also switched to something that is, oh no, this is all stuff that has happened to you in previous lives. This is all actually
Yes.
old stuff. Interesting.
Oh yeah, the past life stuff was right from the get-go.
Yeah.
But they try. I was just trying to show some of how they have upped their game in terms of presentation, in terms of fanciness of the material. This isn't something you read on
it's very material.
white out,
it's very
covered. Somebody typed the transcript literally in their basement. I mean, that's how Scientology used to get passed around.
right.
In terms of this material. And the 50s and 60s, people were literally like typing it on typewriters and shit. And now it's, super high tech. They literally, all of this stuff is created in in-house facilities where they create their own CDs, transcripts. I mean, all of this stuff is like really, really, they're very decked out inside Scientology. I used to work at the places that produce this stuff. So
as much as I said, I absolutely
kind of fun.
Hate this concept of kick the wall, kick the wall, kick the wall. That's actually that's the kind of intensive stuff I need to do if I ever want to do anything. Like, if I ever get, like, any kind of, like, I'm not a very ambitious person. Ambition is just not really in my wheelhouse too much. But if I ever get ambitious about something, I have to go like balls to the walls on it, or I'll just be like, why are we here? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? If we're not
Sure.
gonna go big or go home, what are we doing? Why am I wasting my time? And so
Well,
like that is
Scientology
the
would
level
love
I
you.
need. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd love you for that. Because that's the kind of investment they're looking for, in fact.
Right.
Which is why neurodivergent people often are more susceptible,
Oh.
by the way, to cults than
Because they're
non.
far more like accepted and encouraged to, you know, not be like ostracized by society. The cult is more
Well,
accepting of their behaviors.
I'm saying that more from the point of view of neurodivergent people can hyperfocus. They can, put stuff aside and just kind of go balls to the wall, as you
Oh,
said. That
right. So
kind of
they
thing,
get
right? As they,
blinded and they get pulled in easy.
yeah, they just kind of
Mm.
tunnel vision on a thing, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And kind of push everything else out.
I see.
Um,
That makes sense.
Okay, so that's some show and tell. Now, as far as some stuff I wanted to catch up on that we had talked about or didn't talk about. So we talked all about the early days. We've covered that in a lot of detail. And the transition period and the e-meter and the space cosmology. I mentioned to you that U.S. Marshals showed up in 1952, December 1952, in
Yes.
Philadelphia to arrest L. Ron Hubbard while he was literally in the middle of giving lectures, the doctorate course lectures, the Philadelphia
Doctorate
doctorate course.
level.
Hubbard was
Yeah.
offering a doctorate in Scientology by listening to him give some lectures. And the full story is that they raided the stage and arrested Hubbard for failing to return $9,000 in funds, which he had taken from the Wichita Foundation, the one that he'd gotten the bailout by that Wichita businessman. And Hubbard
Yeah.
had absconded with $9,000, which in 1952 was a lot of money, a lot more
Yeah.
than $9,000, a lot of money right now. It
I'll
was
do the
more then.
I'll do the
And he
conversion.
was fingerprinted. He paid a small settlement, and then he fled to London.
1952, did you say?
Yeah, in 1953, he takes off and goes off to London for a while because things got hot in the States for him for a little bit.
I'm just doing the inflation conversion. So the value in $9,000 in 1952 is the equivalent of the purchasing power of about $113,406.11.
So you can see why they came and arrested him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
So right in the middle of his lectures. I mean, it was just like, you don't hear about that. That's not in the transcripts.
They don't. Bang, 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 FBI, open up.
Yeah, no, none of that. That has all been very carefully excised from any of the historical record. I did not know and never knew when I was in Scientology that Hubbard had been arrested for that. I also didn't know that he had been had a court date up in San Luis Obispo before all this for passing bad checks. So Hubbard had some rather unsavory run-ins.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, I can't imagine why. He's such a good guy.
Yeah, right. So the religion angle shows up earliest in April 1953 in a letter that Hubbard wrote to a woman named Helen O'Brien. She was one of a couple who had actually organized and set up that entire Philadelphia Congress that he was giving. And in April 53, so for the following April, he writes her a letter and says that they're going to pursue the religion angle because that's where real money exists, right? He says they could make real money, he noted, if each clinic of theirs, what they were calling these auditing clinics, they could count on 10 or 15 pre-clears a week, each paying $500 for 24 hours of auditing. He had previously discussed the prospect of converting Scientology into a religion. And he told Helen all about this and said, I await your reaction on the religion angle, quote unquote. So that was when he really started getting real about turning this thing over into a religion. And also he noted at the time that he was very, very obvious and clear in his writings to private individuals that we know of from that time that he knew that this would protect the organization from any legal attacks by medical associations, and that they
Yeah.
would get massive tax
It was
concessions.
intentional, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and make real money, right? All by
So
this religion angle.
for people who are unsure, I also got the conversion for $500 in 1952. So you guys have an idea of how much money people were paying to get this auditing. So if it's
Yeah.
roughly $500 for 24 hours of auditing in 1952, in 2026, that is the equivalent purchasing power of roughly $6,300.24.
Well, there you go. And intensives now are around $4,000 for 12 and a half hours of auditing.
Well,
So there you go, right?
yeah, they kept up pretty good, actually. That's pretty close.
Yeah, doing pretty good there.
Yikes.
So, okay, so that's the religion angle, and then the actual incorporation happens in December 53. Now, where Hubbard secretly incorporates the Church of American Science, the Church of Scientology, and the Church of Spiritual Engineering. Yeah, he set up 3 organizations in Camden, New Jersey. And on February 18th of 1954, just 2 months later, Hubbard sets up the Church of Scientology of California was incorporated as a franchise, and they secured a Doctor of Divinity credential, and he directed his followers to start wearing clerical collars, call themselves reverends, and carry crosses to infiltrate hospitals and prisons. So this begins in 1954.
So
And Hubbard is now taking on this religious angle, right? And that's also when this Background in Ceremonies book comes out.
Okay,
right? The first
that makes
one
sense.
is because we have to be a religion now.
Right.
So in order to incorporate as a religion and tell the IRS you are a religion, you have to show them your dogma, and you have to show them that you are a religious institution that engages in practices that are, pretty typical religious stuff. So Hubbard just copied everything he knew of from the Catholics.
Yeah.
Crosses, naming ceremony, right? Wedding ceremony. Okay, good. We're a religion.
We're good. We got it's fine.
And here we go. And that's why they have the dog collars and all that.
Oh, I got 2 questions from the chat so far. Victoria is asking, would you say, Chris, that L. Ron Hubbard isekai'd a religion? Isekai is a term in anime, manga, Japanese stuff where you get teleported to another world, transported to another world. So I think, if I understand the question correctly, they're basically asking, did L. Ron Hubbard basically just do in another world as the religion?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Well, Victoria, we're not sure if we understand the question. I don't know how to change. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just don't have any point of reference to anime. I don't watch any anime, so I'm sorry.
No worries, Victoria. Feel free to clarify
Every
a little bit.
Every time I hear about anime, I get weirded out. So
you know that is the correct response to anime as somebody who watches anime. Culture Cats asked, do the people who work on the ground floor at like a local Scientology place at Scientology churches know how corrupt the pyramid is? And I think there might be 2 different answers too as well, like in the 50s and currently.
Yeah, no, both times. No, Hubbard was always Hubbard was always about milking and bilking people. So he was trying to play the role of spiritual leader. He goes from, scientist guy, and I'm going to tell you all about this, science of mental health, to spiritual guru guy. And he doesn't start wearing robes and get all Eastern mysticism, but he talks about Eastern mysticism as though he knows what he's talking about. He talks about Buddhism as though he knows what he's talking about. He talks about the spiritual antecedents of Scientology going back 10,000 years of thinking man, right? And this kind of crap. So he's relating, desperately trying to draw connections to legitimate philosophical and religious traditions. And saying that, and he flat out is saying to his audiences, Scientology is the the latest step, or the latest step in this evolution of of spiritual thought
would you
by
call it
melding the East and the West.
would you call it cultural appropriation?
No, I wouldn't,
No.
because he's not,
Okay.
because like I said, he doesn't start running around in robes, and he's not appropriating even their symbols. He's using a Western cross for
Yeah.
his symbology. What he's trying to do is relate to the most number of people as quickly as he can, using symbology that is lowest common denominator.
And to
And
tie
so
his
no, so there's
sci-fi to religion for tax purposes
exactly, in order to do
and
exactly
legal.
that, in order to
Yeah.
create a religion that he can run, that people will believe, that runs this processing and and promises this future state of amazingness.
So
But yeah,
follow up on
yeah,
Culture Cat's question. I'm
yeah.
curious. This is me asking, not them, just to be clear. I don't want to put words in their mouth. How high do you have to get into the organization before you would start getting the information that might indicate to you that this is a scam, or there's a pyramid scheme going on here?
Well, um,
Whether or not you actually did notice, right? Just how high would you have to get before you start getting some of this information that would tip you off?
Well, you wouldn't see the
Mm,
thing about Scientology is it's a closed system. So the information I'm giving you here is information that's generally not available to Scientologists unless they go look it up themselves, and they don't generally do that. They
right.
don't want to burst the bubble, and so they're given an alternative history. See, we're talking real history. There's a mythological history of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard that is offered to Scientologists that is very different from this narrative, and it explains everything and contextualizes all of these events and things I'm telling you about in a very different way. It's a much more intentional, purposeful way, as though Hubbard intended and knew exactly what he was doing. That he did it. That he did all of this in a grand, sort of altruistic, philosophical sort of state of mind. That it was all about helping people and bringing this technology to mankind and changing the entire course of humanity as a result, right? The goals of Scientology, according to Scientologists, are a world without insanity, war, or criminality. So they believe Hubbard was always operating on those principles, and he
Right.
absolutely was not. So they have this whole other mythology that they tell themselves. And it's not just about conversations Scientologists have. There's an entire L. Ron Hubbard life museum that they can go
Right.
to in Hollywood, right? The first floor of that 12-story building they have is the L. Ron Hubbard Life Exhibition, which walks you through his entire life and has just piles and piles and piles of bullshit that they tell you about
Right,
him,
it's just a bunch of
right?
garbage. Yeah,
Oh my God. And they recontextualize everything so that he was the victim, never the perpetrator. And they
of course.
completely wipe out the existence of his second wife. She just doesn't fucking exist in Scientology, right? Sarah, the one
Right.
that he was bigamous with. He was married to two women at the same time for a year.
Yeah.
None of that is in the Scientology history. They've literally photoshopped her out of photos. I mean, she's just not there, and never existed. So Scientologists get a very, very different version of this.
Yeah, there's an
So there
alternate
isn't a
history.
place you get to in Scientology where all of this is revealed to you,
Right.
or where any of this is given to you in a way that is the way I'm giving it to you right now.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right. Yeah, I mean
yeah,
I think that tracks. I think that makes sense because I mean, why would they? Like, and especially why would they when they don't believe that's what's happening to them anyway? So like even the people who are higher up don't necessarily believe that they're part of a scam, right?
exactly, exactly.
Um,
Yeah, that's right.
We did get two more
So
questions before we jump into it.
yeah,
I
fire
think we're
away.
going to end up answering one of the questions as we go on. So I'll ask it briefly, but if we're going to get to it, don't worry about answering it. We'll get there. And it is from Orange Dot, who's been a member for 2 months, asks, what do they mean by spiritual engineering?
That's a funny one because there's never any reference to the Church of Spiritual Engineering ever again.
Oh,
I
it's just
don't know
gone.
if Hubbard was using it as a money laundering step or if it was
No.
some kind of other purpose organization that he had going for a while. But I don't have any data that resulted in or went anywhere. those three incorporated churches, we know for sure, obviously, what happens with Church of Scientology as an incorporated entity, and
Right.
it's changed its corporate structure 2 or 3 times since then. So I don't think those corporations still exist as such.
Apparently YouTube's just lying to me, because Orange Dot then followed up with a member chat for 4 months at Amateur Debater that says 4 months.
There you go.
YouTube's lying to me, guys. What the hell? Okay, Culture Cats also had one other question that said, can Scientology be helpful to the right person? For example, I'm an atheist, but I understand that some people genuinely benefit from a belief in God, or are all Scientologists just fleeced in the end?
I'd have to say they're fleeced in the end, and the reason why is because the auditing process is a psychological manipulation technique that is not resulting in what people think it is. I've explained the whole thing about charge and all that stuff, right? And how people think they're
Yeah.
erasing trauma charge, right? They don't use the word, and I got to be clear, they don't use the word trauma in Scientology. I use the
Right.
word because I want to make sure people understand what the hell Scientologists are talking about. But they don't talk about things like trauma. They talk about charge and engrams and locks and secondaries and mental image pictures. And they have this whole other language they use addressing past incidents that are supposed to be harmful to you. The technique doesn't work. It is sort of deceitful hypnotism.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hypnotism is something that generally people don't really understand. So when I say that word, even that is difficult, right? Because hypnotism is not the watch and I'm going to make you dance
It's
around
not a
like a
cartoon,
monkey.
yeah.
No, but if I give you a series of indoctrination steps or pre-hypnotic and post-hypnotic suggestions and interpret your mental life for you, then and you buy into my interpretations that there are engrams and locks and secondaries and charge and mental image pictures and all this crap, if you interpret your inner world that way, you're not any better off. You pay
Right.
thousands and thousands of dollars. I do these processes on you, and at the end of the day, I haven't really changed anything about you. You're the one who has to institute the change in your life as a result of the auditing, and very, 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 very often they don't institute any changes.
There's
I
also like
was
a really
involved in this for
big
decades,
There's a big dose of behavioral conditioning that is also seems to
Yeah,
be a part of this. So when you start mixing
yeah,
the manipulation, even if you exclude the scamming money part, when you include the hypnotism, the manipulation process, the fact that you don't really get anything out of it at the end of the day, and this behavioral conditioning, you end up with a really big ball of fuck that if and when you can ever get out of that ball of fuck, you're going to be unfucking that ball for the next rest of your life. It's a really bad and I'm sure that there are churches as like individual groups that can exist that do this regardless of whatever their belief in God is. It's just not applicable to all like God believing people or God believing scenarios, right? It's a little bit like the
yeah.
organization versus the belief system, whereas Scientology does not seem to have that separation.
No,
You
no,
don't get that.
and the other thing is that all the beliefs in Scientology lead to auditing.
Right.
So if you're not, you can believe in the assertions of Scientology, but they're not really going to do much for you if you don't get into session. Because the
Right.
whole point of auditing is to relieve you of all of this horrible, horrible stuff that's happened to you over and over again over all these years. And there are bunches and bunches of hidden influences within you that are not just incidents of pain and unconsciousness. There's all this, Xenu, for example, the whole volcano thing is not something you're just going to run across in a Dianetic session. It's all super, super hush hush confidential, and you don't have access to it, according to Scientology. So, not that Xenu is real, but if you believe in it, then
Yeah.
you're going to believe in a whole lot of stuff. Anyway, I don't see the point of believing in Scientology. I don't think it is a helpful belief set, and I don't think it's a helpful practice. I think it's a
Yeah.
destructive practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would. So far as what I've learned from our sessions, from our auditing here, I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
we've uncovered something that has been definitively helpful to anyone except maybe Hubbard at some times in some ways where he seemed to be working with both money, but also like he seems to be projecting and working through some of his issues. Although,
He
albeit it
never
seems to
worked
be
through his
not very
issues.
successfully. Yeah, I don't think he
No,
ever got over it.
no, he did not work through his issues. He
A
died
for
crazy.
effort, I
He
guess.
Nah, yeah. I mean, he didn't even. I mean,
He wasn't
he
really
died
trying.
alone in a ditch, basically. I mean, he really, really did. There is no metric by which you look at L. Ron Hubbard's demise and think he
He was
won.
successful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Fair enough.
no,
Fair
he was
enough.
alone, hiding, running from the law.
Uh,
He had piles of money. So what?
Great.
You know, like he was hiding on a ranch in Creston, California. He had two people who he could interact with personally who cared about him.
Wow.
No, he could not interact with anybody else. He was hiding from the law, right? So, yeah, he was pretty miserable. He was pretty miserable.
Probably karma. But anyway, where were we?
Yes.
1953.
Oh yeah. So just in terms of going through some stuff, yeah, I just wanted to fill in some blanks. So we had the church incorporations, Doctor of Divinity, credentials, and okay. And in 1954, Hubbard also set up something that survives to this day in a different form, which was the Hubbard Association of Scientologists International. This was a membership operation, and the idea was to that 10% of the membership monies and everything would go straight to Hubbard. And it was also in 54 that Hubbard got the copyrights back to Dianetics, as I think we did discuss.
Yes.
In 1955 is when Hubbard first puts out publicly, again, something that will survive to this day, which is an operating principle, organizational principle of attack, never defend. After getting Dianetics copyrights back, Hubbard says, you know what? This works. Fuck Purcell, fuck all my enemies, fuck all these guys. You know what? These guys come at us, we come at them 10 times harder. They take out one of us, we take out 10 of them. It's that kind of attitude, right? Very, very like, strong guy kind of thing. And people, you know, I guess responded to it. But this became official church doctrine. And so right from the get-go,
Oh boy,
almost within a year or two of Scientology forming up, it is engaging in lawsuits. He says Hubbard commands followers to utilize lawsuits strictly to harass and discourage independent practitioners or anybody attacking Scientology. If you go take my stuff, Hubbard says, and you go run off and do your own thing with it, I'm coming after you. I'm coming after you hard, or I'm going to take you out in court. If anybody attacks us, you take them out in court. If anybody has a problem with us, you take them out in court. He says the legal system can be used to damage and hurt and destroy people. So let's use it for that, basically. Right?
I mean, yeah. It can definitely, you can weaponize the court system. I've seen it happen.
The court system. That's right. Yeah. Also at this time is when he says, okay, and if anybody has a problem with us or is calling us out, then what we're going to do is use private detectives to conduct noisy investigations, right? Really obvious, in your face, we're investigating you kind of stuff, to unearth criminal or communist backgrounds on critics, journalists, and hostile politicians. So Hubbard's whole developed take on this from day one was, oh, you're going to come after me, I'm going to come after you harder, and I'm going to make you regret. I'm going to make you rue the day you ever thought about coming after me, Spider-Man. Oh boy! Oh, he was.
This man is Skeletor of the religious group.
Come after me,
He-Man.
So that's all from the get-go, right from the beginning. Hubbard is doing that. So there was never a kind, magnificent time of Scientology. They were always, you know, let's go, man, let's go. Yeah,
competitive. Yeah,
exact. Pugilistic, I think, right?
Pugilistic.
Pugilistic. I want to punch your ass. Now, also at this time, right,
Mm.
1955 to 58, we also have Hubbard writing to, he writes rambling, paranoid letters to the FBI's Communist Activities Division,
Rambling
claiming
described
that
as
Russian,
rambling paranoid letters. And you know what? I've never heard of anybody sending anything that could be considered rambling and paranoid to the FBI. I've never heard of that ever. I've never witnessed that at all. I don't know what you're talking
no,
about.
never, no, crazy people never do that.
Oh.
But Hubbard seemed to be a standout guy in this sense. They, here we go. Yeah, here we go. So the Hubbards, this is in 55. The Hubbards moved into a two-story house in the leafy Maryland suburb of Silver Spring, just outside the Washington, D.C. metro area. And it was from there that Ron resumed his correspondence with the Communist Activities Division of the FBI. On 11 July 55, he wrote a maundering 3-page letter about communists and wicked accountants conspiring with renegade IRS agents to destroy him. So
Renegade
inane,
IRS agents?
so inane that the recipient at the FBI scribbled on it a notation, appears mental. That was how Hubbard's letters were being received at the FBI, right?
Oh
So, and they
boy.
weren't even bothering to acknowledge him anymore. They filed him in the crazy drawer.
But
And
were they wrong to do that? Probably
yeah,
not.
and so then I wish I had this. I think I had a copy of it. I don't know that I still do. It's a little pamphlet-sized booklet or book. It's not 4 or 5 pages. It's more about like 60 or 70, but it's it was a small
Like a
publication.
novella
It
styled.
was called The Brainwashing Manual.
Good name.
Now this is a whole
Oh, good.
episode all by itself, but I'm just going to
Mm.
glean over it, okay?
All right.
The church
Notation for later, guys.
in 1955, L. Ron Hubbard had a really broad idea, and there are people who have talked about this, who were there, like his kid Nibs talked about when this happened. Hubbard was sitting on the porch trying to think about, how do I get the FBI? How do I get these guys to basically be our strongmen for us and take care of our enemies for us, right? And he goes, okay, I know what to do. And he had this bright idea, and he went inside and he started pounding on the typewriter. And about 2 days later, he had this thing called the Brainwashing Manual written. And this
Oh no.
book, okay, the church publishes a booklet called Brainwashing or Psychopolitics, claiming it is a Soviet textbook written by secret police chief Beria. This was a real guy in Russia who ran the KGB. This guy Beria, Hubbard writes this thing and says Beria is the one who wrote it. In reality, the booklet was dictated and written by Hubbard himself to capitalize on the Red Scare anxieties and infect his followers with his personal paranoia. Now, you can go find the Brainwashing Manual on Amazon right now.
Oh no.
I'm looking at it right now on Amazon. A synthesis of the Russian Brainwashing Manual on Psychopolitics. So Hubbard writes a book that purports to be a summary of a larger book that exists in Russia called Psychopolitics, which is all about how to undermine the West through the technology of brainwashing, and that Russia's got it all figured out, and they're infiltrating the West, destroying the family unit, destroying religion, working over people, and doing this psychopolitics.
And this was
this
during the
book
Cold
that
War.
Hubbard, right in the middle of the
Yeah.
Cold War. This is 1955.
1955.
So the manuscript is in 2 parts. The first part is a synthesis written by an anonymous author in 1955, telling how the USSR was going to take over the United States and destroy its culture. The second part of the book is the author's point-by-point analysis of how successful communism is in the USA and why, and the various techniques for brainwashing and selective presentation of information to make people think whatever you want them to think. So this book is now been reprinted
No.
over
I
and
was
over
gonna
and over
say.
again over the
Alright.
years. by Christian groups, evangelical groups, political groups, people like, Heritage Foundation folks, right? Like these brain
Yeah.
trust, these conservative groups, these deeply religious groups, these guys, these anti-communist groups. This book wasn't put out with L. Ron Hubbard's name on it. So when this manuscript goes out and gets mailed out, because Hubbard had it duplicated and sent out to, everywhere he could, people took it and ran with it and thought that this was a legit publication exposing Russian propaganda right here in the United States. And to this day, this book survives in conspiracy theory groups who believe it actually was from Beria or from Russia.
Okay, you know how people say the internet was a mistake because like dumb things are able to happen? This is the printing press was the mistake situation.
Yeah. This is that kind of situation.
No.
This is shit going viral before there was an internet, right? This is how it was done. And Hubbard used Scientologists. He mailed this out to all the Scientologists, and of course they made copies and mailed it out because it was electrifying information. I believed this manual. I saw it, read it when I was in Scientology. This was actually one of the first introductions of in my own life to the rabbit hole of conspiracy theory and the Cold War and Russia and the scary, scary Russia. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s when the Cold War was still a thing.
So it was a Russia hoax?
What's that?
So this book was a Russia hoax? He made up a hoax about Russia?
He did. The entire thing was made up. Russia does have propagandist plans, and Russia does do things in the United States to disrupt us.
Yes.
They have,
especially in the 50s.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's plausible, and that's why people believed it.
Oh.
Right? Because Hubbard doesn't say anything about e-meters or about Scientology in this, except to mention, because he couldn't fucking help himself, except to mention that, he name drops it once as, this workable mental technology that Russia fears. And so, they name drop it. Dianetics or Scientology in there, right? But it's only the one thing. There's nothing else in there that's too overly bombastic about L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology. So the authorship of the work is not obvious unless you read a lot of Hubbard, and then you can totally tell it's L. Ron Hubbard writing this. But if you don't know L. Ron Hubbard's writing style, then it wouldn't leap out at you.
Right. And people who were in Scientology were so conditioned to believe what they were reading that they wouldn't have even.
Oh, they didn't care if Hubbard wrote it, right? They thought, oh, great, let's get the word out there, right? People aren't listening. Get the word out there, right? They didn't really care one way or the other. But there's still, to this day, a lot of Scientologists who don't think L. Ron Hubbard wrote it.
Okay.
They think that's the conspiracy theory.
Oh,
you're just saying that. You're just saying that. You don't know. You don't know. You weren't there. But L. Ron Hubbard's kid was.
Oh.
And he's dished on all the details, right?
Oof,
but they don't care about that because Nib's defected, right?
He's a traitor.
So,
he'll say anything.
That's right. Axe to grind. So another thing that happened, now this is interesting because this is the first time when Scientology actually gets interfered with by the government in a real world way.
Oh.
In 1956, Hubbard was giving anti-radiation lectures, right? How to fight radiation, how to deal with radiation, because nuclear fallout or atomic fallout was all the rage, right?
Get inside of a refrigerator. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hubbard begins marketing something called dianosine, which is a niacin compound.
Oh.
And he claims that it can prevent and treat radiation sickness in the event of a nuclear war. So the FDA shuts this shit down, right? In April 58, the Food and Drug Administration raided a Scientology center and seized 21,000 dianosine tablets for false labeling, subsequently burning them in an incinerator. So they shut down Hubbard, stating that he could cure, radiation sickness with dianosine.
Right.
This also turned them on to the e-meter. So the FDA is looking at the e-meter and going, what the hell is that? But they don't act immediately. They just take
Right.
note. They just go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're not, you guys aren't doing any of this Dianazine shit anymore. We're done with that. But what's the E-meter? Well, it takes them a few years. And that's when there was another raid in 1963. But we'll get to that. So it starts in April 1958. That's the point.
Mm. Okay.
Is when the FDA first takes notice. Hubbard had already been writing to the FBI, crazy town letters, and
Mm-hmm.
the government investigations tend to go slow. And these
That they
guys are not
do.
on the internet, so talking to each other means they literally have to go talk to each other or call each other on the phone, go through their files, all that kind of stuff. This is the days of typewriters. So information, was slow in going from one place in the government to another place in the government.
Right.
So it took the FDA a while to find out what the FBI knew and what they knew and what these other guys knew, and talking to each other. But it was the FDA that actually has some of the most interesting interviews, because they start going around interviewing people who knew Hubbard or had been involved in Scientology. They're going, "What's up with this E-meter? What is this
What
thing
is
all
this?
about?"
Yeah.
Right? And remember also that I forgot to tell you guys the story that I said that in 1954 or so, L. Ron Hubbard had stopped using e-meters because he ran into this big, he had a big argument with Volney Matheson about the profits, the distribution of
Oh,
profits for the
of course it was
e-meters, right?
profits.
Hubbard,
What else would he argue about?
exactly.
Money.
He wanted the
Money.
ownership of the e-meter. He wanted to buy out Volney, and Volney was like, "Yeah, go fuck off." So
Right.
Hubbard was was the distributor for the e-meter. It wasn't like Volney was finding a lot of other people to buy these things. But
Right.
he didn't really like where Hubbard was going, and he wanted to Volney was kind of like an L. Ron Hubbard himself in some ways. So
Okay.
he didn't want to play nice with Hubbard anymore. So they didn't have an e-meter for about 2.5 years. And in 1957, a guy named Don Breeding, who was an electrician or electronics guy who was in Scientology and loyal to Hubbard, figured out how to make a transistor-based e-meter, because the transistor, that circuit had just been invented. And they had vacuum tubes before, so the e-meter was this great big box. And now with the transistorized circuit, I think that's what's called, they could build it into a much smaller box, and it could be run on a battery that could be put in the box. And he figured this whole thing out and reworked the e-meter. And this e-meter Don Breeding created was called the Hubbard electropsychometer Mark 1.
Of course.
Mark 1.
Of course.
And it's now up to the Mark 8.
Oh.
Okay, that's the latest version of the Scientology e-meter is that. But
has
the first
there
one was
been any major technological changes to this thing, or is it just looks fancier?
It's digital
modernized.
now.
Oh, it's
The mechanisms inside now are all digital, rather than any how they used to be. But so it's all very fancy, but it's the same theoretical concept electronically. The system hasn't changed at all in terms of what it's doing, right? And we don't have to go into a whole thing. I've done a whole metering video. It's a complicated device, but the bottom line is that it is reading. It's measuring resistance to an electrical circuit that's run over your body, and their interpretation of that is very spiritual in nature, with the mental image pictures and the sheets of energy and all that crap that don't really exist. They are saying that the meter is reading those things. And so when Hubbard claims that, Scientologists believe it, because they don't know anything about electronics.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is Scientology e-meter demystified live stream.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up, and I'll put it in the chat for you guys. You can go check that out.
Because I really go into a lot of detail on the e-meter and stuff. So, so he gets the e-meter back, and now it's his e-meter.
It's got his name on it, guys.
All the profits of the e-meter are now L. Ron Hubbard's, and the myth and lore of the e-meter has practically been rewritten now, so that Hubbard is the inventor of it. And most people in Scientology think that L. Ron Hubbard invented the e-meter.
And some bad guy tried to steal it from him, but then Hubbard was like, "No, it's mine."
You got it.
He-Man.
You got it. So yeah. So that it's just, you know what I mean? That's just like, it's
This
just
is the
lie
this
after
is
lie after lie on this thing, right?
It's
But
the kind of
I
shit that you would not believe if you didn't have, like, all of it written down. It's the kind of
right?
stuff that you're like, there's no way somebody would do this. Why would anybody do this? Meanwhile, L. Ron Hubbard's like, watch
Nope,
me.
I'll do it. Yep, exactly. The
Watch
guy
me
had like,
go.
his moral compass is just swinging on such a different
Yeah,
north
what
than the
moral
rest of us.
compass? It's just
No,
spinning.
everybody's got one. His is just a bit wild, right? So um anyway, yeah. So Hubbard gets the e-meter back, and in 1957, we're back, baby. And now we're selling e-meters and, you know, going to town on e-meters again.
Did he ever
And if
sign
I
any of
told
them and
you,
sell them as specialty ones?
oh my God. Let me see if I can find this, because you guys might just get a blast out of this. There is a book that was put out in 1958. I mentioned that Hubbard was going around the US or around the world and giving lectures twice a year. He was doing these congresses and these
Yes.
advanced clinical courses. And well, there was one. Let me see if I can pull this up real fast. There was a Congress.
While you're pulling it up, Hawkskull in the chat said Hubbard's moral standing is lying down.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Have you lived before this life?
Oh.
It's a book. It's a book that the Church of Scientology produced. It's not produced anymore. They don't publish this book anymore.
Oh, it must be really bad if,
But this
if
book,
they're
I'm
not
looking
even
right
willing.
at it.
Yeah.
Have you lived before this life? A scientific survey by L. Ron Hubbard. A study of past lives through Dianetic engrams. Publications Department, Church of Scientology. So this is copyright 1958. Okay. And this is supposedly a book laying out. Yeah, here we go. Now, this was not actually put together by L. Ron Hubbard. This is put together by the editors.
Okay.
Who are you? Have you lived before? What is your name? Say your name over to yourself a few times. Say it over and over. Come on, say it some more. Now say your name a few more times.
Stop.
Now say it a few more, just to make sure of it. That is right.
This is like
Better
evil
go back
Dr. Seuss.
Better go back and do it a few more times if you missed. All right. Now let me ask it again. Who are you? Who did you really come from? How do you know you haven't lived before? Dianetics techniques indicate that you have. And Dianetics, which has revealed so much to the Western world, comes up now with this strange datum. You are you, but you may have lived elsewhere under another name without even suspecting it yourself.
You're you, but except when you're not.
Curious, isn't it, that a top flight science would tell you, Mr. and Mrs. Modern, that not all the answers to everything were yet known. Scientific experiments, now this is where they go into full-blown delusional versions of reality.
They weren't already there. Okay.
Scientific experiments undertaken in the past few months strongly indicate that birth was no beginning. 70 persons wholly without hypnotism were tested, and 70 out of 70 showed evidence of having lived before. All capital letters.
I don't like that you put the word without hypnotism, because I wasn't suspecting hypnotism until you said without hypnotism, and now I'm suspecting that you use hypnotism.
Exactly.
This is like when somebody walks into an interview and says, I'm definitely not a mind reader. Like, I wasn't thinking you were, but now I'm concerned.
Exactly. Now, conservative Scientology practitioners have studied this newest Dianetics craze. Their findings are to be found in this book, signed the editors. And then they go on to tell you, in the fall of 1958 in London, a group of Scientologists convened to acquire the most advanced methods of psychotherapy, which had achieved success. And they go on to describe clearing and the persons of the study, the character of Scientology, the electrometer, Scientology. Here's how they're talking about it in 1958. They were paired off in the routine Scientological manner and using electrometers set about locating the possibility of Dianetic engrams. The electrometer is the oldest known instrument of psychotherapy.
Oh.
Now, do you know how they get away with saying bullshit like that?
Yeah, how?
Because Carl Jung experimented with galvanic skin response with a very, very crude form of an e-meter, a lie detector, back in the 1890s. And they
Okay.
used it for word association. And they tried to hook people up to this device that would register galvanic skin response,
Yeah.
which is really just resistance to an electric flow running over your skin. That's all it is. It's not
Yeah.
reading into your body, it's not reading your mind. And this was found by Jung to be completely unusable because it was so random and because the reactions could go off into any direction. You didn't really know, because you got a reaction on a word, what that meant. There was no single answer that it indicated. It didn't indicate trauma. It didn't indicate stress. It didn't indicate anxiety 100% of the time. Sometimes it indicated a
It
goddamn
wasn't
stomach
consistent.
ache, a hiccup,
Yeah.
a random thought about your wife. It wasn't consistent in any way at all. And because of that, it turned out to not be a useful scientific instrument, and they stopped using it. You can look all this up. And this was back in the 1890s. Hubbard resuscitates this entire idea and ignores all of the facts about it because he comes up with his own lore as to what this meter is doing. And then they get to say stuff like, it's the oldest known instrument of psychotherapy.
I mean, does a lobotomy count as psychotherapy? Because a stick to the brain.
Right? Actually, good point. So, yeah, plus, of course, there is the oldest known instrument of psychotherapy. You mean the dunking box? You mean
right?
the slapstick? You mean the, yeah, I know. You're not wrong on that. So, invented about 100 years ago and called the Wheatstone Bridge, it has been and is the mental investigator's chief tool. Yet, no, it's not. And it never has been, and it's not useful for that. But these guys don't know that. And so they assert this shit, right? Variously called the skin galvanometer and lie detector. Older versions can be found in any mental laboratory.
One thing. Oh, the best thing to help you with psychotherapy? Oh, I'm sorry, you mean a dog? This is one of those things where it's like, guys, what are you talking about? And how does it end up like this? And the answer is because Scientology doesn't have external checks and balances. It is the people who are the authors, the people who are the editors, the people that are publishing this already believe what's being published. You don't have somebody writing a book and sending it to an external publisher to have it get looked at and read and proofread and then sent out. It's all internal. It's all internal. And that's why those types of things are as dangerous as they are and are as problematic as they are, is because the structure has no checks and balances within it. So if you're joining something or you're looking into something and you want to participate in something that seems really, really good, check out their structure and see how they're doing this, because you've got to look out for any kind of external checks and balances.
Exactly. Now, let me just read a little bit more of this, then we'll move on.
Yes.
I just wanted people to get a picture of what people were being told about this at a time when they didn't know any better.
And why they would believe it, right?
And why they'd believe it. That's right. So the e-meter, as it's called in the parlance of psychotherapy, detects areas of mental charge and stress. This is as useful to the police officer as it is to the therapist, as all it denotes is that something is troubling a person, and it then goes on to locate it in time and character. That is about the closest thing to reality this entire paper gets to. Some people with guilty consciences are justifiably afraid of the e-meter, since it reveals anything and everything they have done and been when used by an expert practitioner. And that's where the lie exists.
Bro, a mood ring works just as well, if not better.
Yes. You're nailing it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Did they get this thing out of a cereal box?
I'll share this one last bit. Under the concept of Scientology techniques used in therapy differ greatly from hypnotism. In hypnotism, the aim is to put the patient to sleep and make him as irresponsible as possible for his answers. There is not one word of that sentence that is true. But
Oh.
that's what they believe. That's what Scientologists are told.
That's
by
why I
L. Ron
believe
Hubbard,
they're
and that's why
not
they wrote that.
engaging. They're not engaging in hypnotism because they've redefined it
That's
amongst
right.
themselves.
Exactly. In Scientology, the reverse is true. The patient is made more and more alert, more and more responsible, and truthful.
Wow, what a lovely straw man you've put up.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh
So they
no.
go into this whole thing. If you read this, you are just going to be absolutely floored by the ignorance of it. But they go into this whole
I'm gonna
thing,
need
and
to
then
buy this and read it at the beach
here are the
next year.
reports on what's that?
So I'm gonna have to buy this book and read it at the beach next year.
I'm telling you. So I'm just gonna look through here.
I'm gonna scare like there are kids that go to the beach, and I'm just gonna be sitting there reading this, and I'm just gonna be like, "What the fuck?" And like,
exactly. So that's one example of the way Scientology was sort of promoting itself as of 1958. Right? You had people enabling L. Ron Hubbard. He wasn't writing the stuff, they were. And they were writing it based on his lectures and based on groups of Scientologists getting together and telling themselves that they were diving into their past lives using this e-meter.
science.
And there are descriptions in this book about robot bodies and how they crashed spaceships onto planets and, wandered around and took over society. I mean, there's just crazy town stories that people are recalling from their past lives in this book. So this was supposed to be presented as proof that what L. Ron Hubbard was saying was true. And so I thought you guys might appreciate a little bit of look at that. Right?
That's crazy.
So, yeah. Now here is where, now this is when things get fun. Because in 1958, the same year that that's happening, their first instance of tax exemption revocation happens.
In 1958?
Scientology, 1958. That's right. Okay. The Scientology had incorporated under a couple different corporations. There's the founding Church of Scientology in Washington, D.C., which is its own corporation. That is found to be not, they take the tax exemption away from that entity.
Okay.
The Church of Scientology of California, which tends to be, for a long period of time up through the 70s, is the mother church. That's where that's kind of the corporation that really is the church. Okay. But initially, this Washington, D.C. church was sort of fulfilling that role. California became much more important after D.C. loses its tax exemption.
Of course, because we got to move to somewhere where we can make our money.
That's right. And look, and now ask me, but why did they lose their tax exemption, Chris?
Well, why did they lose their tax exemption, Chris?
Well, it's funny you asked that, Shesh, because the IRS rules that the church's profits are not being spent for entirely religious purposes, but were instead being siphoned directly to L. Ron Hubbard and his family via commissions, royalties, and car and home payments.
You mean they were doing embezzlement?
They were doing what is called inurement.
Inurement.
They were personally profiting from the profits or money that a church, a nonprofit, was making. They were taking that money and they were taking it to the tune of, I think, $108,000 a week or something. It was a lot.
All right, hold on. Let me get the calculator out. 108,000. Yeah. 108,000 in 1958. All right, let's find out. Let's see. Oh my god. Okay. You said a week?
Maybe that's too high. It wasn't that much a week. But it was a lot.
Like $100 in 1957 is roughly $1,159.97 currently.
Yep.
It's a lot of money.
Yep. Yeah, they had gotten exemption in 56 and the other churches followed. And then in 58, exemption was denied. And they appealed to the court and whatnot. And this is the beginning of what becomes a years-long battle with the United States government. It starts in 1958.
have
And
so much money. Why do you still want more? Just be happy and spend the money you have. Why are you fucking everything up? I don't understand. Greed. Greed
well,
will kill you.
Hubbard had a real problem keeping money. Just spent it,
Apparently.
spent it, spent it, spent it. And that's one of the ways that these
What?
guys end up, needing
What?
more money and needing more money and needing more money. And he would
Oh my
go
god.
around doing these lectures on doing these ACCs and congresses and stuff. And he would do them at local churches, and then he'd raid their coffers, give
Yeah,
me
he'd
the
take
money.
all their money and go.
And he'd take their money and off they went, right?
Yeah, that's not,
So
certainly not the only his only source of income. Like,
So, in the spring of 1959, seeking escape from mounting legal, financial, and tax pressures in America, Hubbard purchased St. Hill Manor in East Grinstead, Sussex, England, and he moved
right.
there and set up shop there
He
for
fled to
Scientology
England.
internationally. And they
Can
all went
I
over
take
to
this one
England.
moment to remind everybody that the top 10 people who have the most amount of money on the planet, 9 of them are American. One of them is from France. There is not a Canadian on that list.
Used to be a feature, not a bug.
I know, right?
Used to be. I know.
Oh no.
Yeah, the world's a fun place. But
Oh, we live
anyway,
in a society.
I wanted to kind of go through some of those kind of fill in the hole kind of things a little bit that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
realize I was leaving behind in the trail. But
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
move to England is big, but it's classic Hubbard, because now we see the pattern. If you kind of, I know I've been all over the place and kind of disjointed in talking about all this, but you see a pattern here where Hubbard catches a tiger by the tail with Dianetics and is really on this runaway bestseller, and he's got money like he's never had before. And this is a man who has been struggling for years and
Yeah.
years and years financially. He has
Yeah.
not had it good. And he's been going from con to this, to that, to the other thing, trying to, get the money, trying to get the
Grifting.
government to pay disability,
Yep.
and, claiming all these problems, and he finally starts getting some organization in place and starts building this church, and then gets the idea of making it a church, right? Okay, good. Let's do tax exemption. Let's do this whole thing, the religion angle. But every time the fucking guy has the police sniffing around, it starts in New Jersey, moves to Wichita. Wichita gets hot for him. He runs to Phoenix. Phoenix gets hot for him. He runs to DC. DC gets hot for him. He runs to England. Right? He's a fly-by-nighter. That's who
Yeah.
Hubbard is, right? He's a
Well,
fly-by-nighter.
he even did that to his
But,
first wife.
and his second. The guy was just a fucking cad, right? And a coward. And he would run these operations and then run out of town. And that's the real kind of spirit of how Scientology got started. Somehow, despite this, he's building up a base of belief that people are just glomming onto for whatever reason. And I think there's a panoply of reasons, from what I was just reading to you, right? People are fascinated by past lives. They're fascinated by the science of it. They're fascinated by the e-meter. There's this device. It looks real. It is a real device.
He had
The
10
needle moves
years of
around.
a
Look at all
shitload
this.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of shit happening over this 10-year period of time. And somehow,
Messy.
through a lot of hooks and a lot of crooks, Hubbard managed to build something over this time. And again, I really, really, really think it had everything to do with his enablers and his inner circle, the fact that he had people who were familially loyal to him, with his wife and his kid, and people who, like we see in that movie, The Master, the Freddie Quill, Joaquin Phoenix character, just wanders in off the street and just becomes intensely loyal to this thing, to this operation. And Hubbard just kind of used people like that over and over and over again through the years. I mean, I was a person who was used like that. Now, I'm not Freddie Quill, but that kind of thing of like you wander in, and I'm to the point now, much later, where people are being raised with this shit.
Right.
But at the beginning, it was all first gen conversions, right? It was like adults converting to this stuff,
Right.
and bringing their kids into it as early as the 1950s. I've interviewed people who grew up in Scientology in the 1950s.
I was gonna ask a question, and I realized my question was stupid because I already know the answer, and I think everybody else does. I was gonna ask, is there a demographic that found itself more drawn to this in early Scientology, and then I realized that question was stupid. This was the 1950s, and the only people who had money was right. So I'm being a little bit dismissive of it, but
I mean,
yeah.
it's a very white religion, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
it's not that. But the reason why it would be inaccurate to say the only people who had money in the 1950s were white people.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely being super flippant about
But
it.
yeah,
It
is white. It's very
is
white.
it terribly like racist in particular?
No. Well, I mean,
or is
Hubbard
it-
was racist, but Scientology is not. It's very
money
very hard for a
money
group-
doesn't see color, man.
Exactly. It's also very hard for a group that claims you're an immortal spiritual being without gender or race to be racist.
Yeah, this isn't really not very conducive.
It doesn't
to
really fit the mantra, right?
So
Hubbard
I mean, I guess you can give Scientology
racist.
that.
Hubbard was racist, though.
Right.
And when we get to Rhodesia, I'm going to tell you all about how racist that fucking guy was.
The tea is coming down the line. You guys are getting the snippets. On that one. We got
that's 1966.
1966. We're at 1958. We're almost at the 60s. He has made it to the UK. He's about to establish Scientology International. He's about to run the exact same scam that he ran in the United States over in England, because in England they wouldn't have heard about what had happened or wouldn't know much about what had happened.
Well, he's already established. Now remember, he's already went over to London in 1952, 53.
That's right.
He's already set up shop over there.
Right.
There is a Church of Scientology of London, is one of the first churches. It's still there. There were Manchester, Edinburgh. There's a lot of places in the UK, Plymouth, I think, where they set up shop. They had early, I think 50s is when they first set up in Sydney, in Australia. So it's becoming international. By the 1950s, this is definitely an international outfit. But St. Hill in England, where Hubbard moved and set up operations, really is when the 60s is when it really solidifies as an international.
Well, it's getting into the woo of like the 60s and 70s,
That's right, and that's why the demographic changes, because originally the demographic for Dianetics was engineering type people. There were a boatload of engineer types who got on board with Dianetics. They thought it was really mechanistic and interesting, and they could think of the brain or the mind in a very systematized way. With the way Hubbard was talking about engrams and reactive mind and all that. You could diagram this out very easily, and people loved it. But as he went into the Thetan theory stuff, he kind of lost some of those guys and gained more hippy-dippy type people, more spiritual type people. And as the thing moved on, Scientology morphed its marketing as it generated and became more savvy at marketing. In the 60s, it became very, very spiritualistic, right? And the 70s was all about your spiritual power. And then in the 80s, it became more, Dianetics again. Dianetics had a resuscitation on the New York Times bestseller list with a killer set of marketing ads that were done. And they kind of resuscitated the battlefield of, your mind is your best weapon in the battlefield of life,
versus
and it
the
was
machine.
1980s became more of that.
All the grunge and punk of the 80s, into the 90s grunge.
And that rolls into the 90s, and then today they're sort of back to the spiritual technology motif. And their Super Bowl commercials are sort of teasing the e-meter and stuff like that, right? So, but they don't really know how to market themselves right now compared to how good they used to do it.
That's probably for the best. Also, I do note that I think it's important to point out that this type of shifting and moving how they're presenting themselves to the populace is important to note that this was happening while L. Ron Hubbard was running stuff. While he was still alive. So this was definitely, all this stuff was happening well within his control. It's not like he had something, then other people took it and then started doing bad shit with it. No,
definitely, this was all L. Ron Hubbard's baby. And he was going to be the first person to remind you of that. So, so I think we covered a lot here today already with all this, but
we are at about an hour and 40,
really, that kind of really finishes filling in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's a lot. but it sets up the stage for other things that you're going to need to know about later. We're doing a sort of a passive look at this stuff. I'm not going into as much detail as I could because there's so many details you guys can see.
Well,
But
apparently we got to read that
I
book.
hope it's interesting. I hope we're covering stuff in an interesting way.
Let me know where you were as a clam in your last life. What beach did you reside on?
Right, exactly. Imagine a clam sitting on a beach. It's just struggling. You're not helping it, Leon. Why aren't you helping it? You know,
bro, I'm struggling right now. Amazing.
Teasing the E-meter sounds like 90s skater slang. That's right. Gleaming the cube. That's right. Teasing the E-meter. This is gonna be great. Anyway, I just, like I said, I hope I'm doing this stuff a halfway decent rendition of this, but it's just, you can kind of see just the crazy town of this, and there are so many rabbit holes Hubbard dived down into in the 1950s. He talked about life as a game, and he developed a whole thing about games processing. He talked about, you know, radiation, and for about a year and a half, he was on this whole fucking tear about how Scientology was the solution to atomic war, and how we were the guys who had the solution to that, so you didn't have to worry.
Have you guys
on and on and on, right?
He makes me think of, have you guys ever had like that one druggy friend who's always got crazy ideas, and they're like a burnout type of druggie where they're like they're like never sober, and they're always going on about something, and they're always couch surfing, and then they disappear. They're the type of person that they just disappear for, like, you don't know if they're alive or dead or if they've been arrested and then like 2 months later they come back and they're like sit down on your couch and like they raid your fridge, and then they tell you about all this crazy shit, and you're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is hell. That's what Hubbard sounds like to me.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow that dude forms an international religion that is worth a few $1 billion now, right? Like how the fuck did that happen?
This is what would happen if society was just like encouraged, like the people closest to the druggie were like, yeah, this is a great idea, do this, keep going.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
No. Well,
so yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's also good that we keep these a little bit shorter because there's so much that it's just going to overload you with information. That's one of the reasons why we also do it every other week, and both because we're busy people. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time and your energy and your effort. Go and check out his book. Yes. Plural.
Books. If you want to know about Scientology, I'm telling you, this book here, it'll tell you everything you ever wanted to know. And if you want to know about cult recovery, this is the book. It'll tell you so much about what you need to know. So
absolutely. Check those out. We'll be back, not next Thursday, the Thursday after. And other than that, you got anything else going on?
No, just check out my channel.
Check out Chris's channel. Link is in the description. And if you want to ask him questions about other stuff, head over to his channel. We will be back doing another Singularity stream on the 16th with Chris again, if you're interested in that. Yay! That was really good, and check it out if you missed it, because it was really fun. And we will be live on Saturday for doing politics and newsy type stuff and things, if you like that. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get the hell out of here, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!
Bye, everybody.